Hey folks, I want to show you three, well, actually it's going to be four. There's a bonus one. Um, Products that I've been working on for a long time, uh, several years in some cases. Um, I've been using them myself, and it's time to share them with the world. In some cases, you may have seen some of these already if you watch either this YouTube channel or some of my other YouTube channels. You may have seen some of this stuff. I may have posted about some of it on LinkedIn. Um, but it really falls into three categories. So the first category is project management. You may know that I'm not the world's best product project manager, um, and I really like my tooling to support me in that. So I built a tool that I think is the best project management solution out there. Um, Next up, we have specifically an automation tool. Um, and this is really fun for me because I write a lot of code. I write some code that's just scripts on my computer. And I really wanted them to actually live somewhere else so that other people could run them. Or they just weren't on my computer. They could be in a position to orchestrate, other pieces of my process, or if I'm working with people, they can work with the same things. And then finally, we're going to talk about deployment. So I write a lot of code, and I need it to get out into the world somehow. And there's different deployment models that are appropriate for different things. I know that, there's a lot of buzz about things like Kubernetes, right? That's been the cool thing for a long time. But at the same time, Kubernetes might be a little bit heavy for what you're doing. So I have actually two things. That's where the bonus one comes in. And actually, both of them are open source. Um, they've been open source from the beginning for various reasons, and we'll talk briefly about both of them. We're actually going to talk briefly about all four of these things. All four will probably get their own videos soon, um, but let's dive right in. So, first up, we have something that was called Valence initially. I'm retooling it and calling it Glassminnow for a variety of reasons, but you may see both names on the site, at least for the time being. So you can go to glassminnow.com. This is live. You can sign up. It is a SaaS platform for project management. And the basic process is it supports products, not projects. Um, I know it's a project management tool, but it starts with products. The idea is that something might have an infinite life cycle. It's not, something that has a distinct start and end. You can get into that later, right? You build down in the weeds, the nitty-gritty things. Um, but it's really designed to help you work the way you normally work, but also provide visibility at those other levels and kind of do that automatically. So you can actually see down at the bottom here. Um, I have a demo card, right? Do a thing, right? It's basically an issue, right? And it might have sub issues, right? And you can see one is done, five are in progress, and a few are not started. That's not just these sub issues, right? There are only five sub issues. This is those sub issues and their sub issues, their children. You can see right at the top level here, this issue has children, right? And you can actually drill in and see exactly what's going on. So demo four was the one that I was looking at, and it has four children, which are two are in progress, one is done, and one is new, right? And we can go back. If things were happening over time, you could actually see how this particular task was burning down over time. Right now, there are five incomplete. You could see, how progress was being made. Um, there are other features that kind of go along with this, but one of the things that I really wanted to build into this was to answer the question of what do I do next? As a developer, there's a lot going on. I don't have visibility into the priorities, but what should I work on next? So there's this planning view, which basically shows what you should work on next. Um, based on what's blocking what and what in support of each other. So a child issue, um, yeah, obviously has to get done before a parent issue, but you should probably start the parent issue before you start working on child issues. So it takes those sorts of things into account. Um, in addition, you can see that's not what I wanted to click. Here we go. You can actually see a whole graph of everything related to a particular issue. So in order to accomplish do a thing, all of this other stuff needs to happen. And you can see exactly how it all relates and what's in progress and what is new and that sort of thing. So it's a really powerful tool. Basically applying database logic to this structure of tickets and project management stuff. Um, so uh, I really enjoy working with it because it surfaces all that information right up to me. And I can spend a whole day kind of down in the weeds and then quick come up for air, see exactly what needs to be done, how far along everything is, and then go right back down into the weeds and get some more work done. So that's Valence, also known as Glass Minnow, soon to be completely called Glass Minnow. Now let's talk about automation. So I have this thing called Astromech, which is basically exactly what it sounds. It's a little droid automaton in the cloud. Um, and so I've set it up here. It's got a little web server. And if I go to a particular URL, which I don't know if you can see that in the top left corner, I have this script, hello.py. Um, and if I were to run it, so here's the Scalar API client from our friends over at Scalar. I post to that same URL and I can click send and it runs the Python script and it's basically just a hello world, right? Nothing fancy. Well, let's say we want to make it a little more advanced and find our VS Code here. Here we go, VS Code. Let's say we wanted to generate a GUID, right? Or a UUID, right? Have it do some actual work. Well, that's great. We can save that and make a commit. Let's spell it right. And then we can push it. And now if we go back and run it, my mouse cooperates. Now we have hello UUID and it prints out a UUID, right? So all I did was write a script, committed it, pushed it, and Astromech allows it to be run just by sending a post request, which is pretty cool. Now, let's talk about deployment, which is actually kind of what Astromech was built in support of. It was more of a like an orchestrator, um, but I also have some purpose-built tools for deployment. So the first one is Thing Runner, which naming is hard. Um, it's basically just a little service runner. And you can read the backstory if you want to. Um, but basically, the idea is that you set up this little service configuration, which basically is a name and a description, and then a list of tasks. And then Thing Runner will just spin them up as tasks. Um, it's it draws some inspiration from things like systemd, but more so from things like ECS, Elastic Container Service in AWS. But the idea is that it's not tied to any particular infrastructure. It's not tied to even running images. It could run just scripts. Um, Actually, the Thing Runner API is run as a Thing Runner service, which is just a script. It's just an executable on the system. Um, so I enjoyed writing this. I think it's pretty cool. It's a really easy way for me to run a lot of the little utilities that I put together that need a home, need to be run on a VPS and that sort of thing. Um, and you can read all about this. All of these links to all of these things I will leave down in the description below. Again, this is on GitHub. This is open source. Go ahead and check it out. There's some documentation here all about how it works. And then our bonus tool is a tool that I actually wrote. Well, the timestamp says 5 years ago. Um, so this was back when I was learning Go. This is the tool that I used to learn how to write Go um, code. And it's basically just it's a continuous deployment tool. So basically, what I was typically doing at the time was I would bundle up my application, and then I would SCP secure copy it up to a VPS, and then do something to extract it and restart some services. And maybe there was some configuration that needed to be done in order to actually make it run and that sort of thing. Um, but every single time I was going through the same steps and basically writing the same script, like shell scripts, in order to do things. So I decided to put it all together into a single executable. I picked Go because it was A, I wanted to learn Go, and B, it was something where I could compile it into a single executable, and it was self-contained. At the time, C Sharp was not, it had some issues with that. Um, but it is self-contained, and basically you download the executable and it runs locally. And when it runs against a config file, just like what you see on the screen here. At a certain point in time, it copies itself and this config file up to the server that you specify in targets, and then it runs the remote side, which actually copies or it has already copied the artifacts up, but it creates a folder in the deploy base folder. It does some copying steps, and it uh, builds if necessary, and then run some scripts. Post inst is like what happens to configure the new build, the new instance, before it actually kills the old one and starts the new one. And then restart is what do you actually do to restart the application? Do you need to kill an old application? Or in the case of like a PHP app, maybe you don't have to do anything. But it also handles all of the complexity of managing multiple versions, and getting the artifacts up onto the server all internally. It's actually very simple if you look at the actual Go code. There really isn't a whole lot there, but it's very powerful in its structure. And it really helps me, especially with these comments, think through the various stages that my deployment goes through. Um, it definitely can scale to multiple systems, to like a horizontally scaled setup. Um, but this example file doesn't show that. Um, so yeah, again, another thing that's out there, that you can use right now, and it's something that I've built. So with that, I want to cut this video off at 15 minutes so that I can actually post it directly to LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a 15-minute cap. Um, but four of these tools are available right now. Um, Glassminnow is available. It's a SaaS application. If you get to a certain size and scale, you can pay for it. I would love it if you would pay for it. Um, but there is a free tier as well. Astromech also is a paid product. And if you're interested in that, reach out to me directly. And then Thing Runner and Whiskey, my deployment product, um, because Whiskey makes all deployments painless. That's where the name came from. Um, both of those are open source. Obviously, you're more than welcome to try them out and use them. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.